Now, first off, Cody, I want to talk about the most important undrafted player, Shiloh Sanders, because he's the most important Sanders son, right? No. Obviously, Shedeur, everybody thought he was going to either be drafted either in the top 3, top 10, first round. I always thought, and we had plenty of conversations surrounding this, he was probably a round 2 or 3, maybe even 4 prospect, was going to get drafted probably higher than what he was slotted at just because name value is a bad quarterback year, all of the different factors. But then he slides all the way to pick 144, round 5, and it's like, well, I don't know if he's all the way down there either. And you see some of the quarterbacks getting drafted ahead of him. It's like, well, what is this? What is the middle ground where we all kind of feel wrong? Where do you kind of stand on it, Cody?
Yeah, so if you go and look at historically how quarterbacks have been drafted, that they either go in the first round. There's been a few in the second round. Drew Brees, Hurts, those are probably good examples. Russell Wilson is another one where it's like, whoa, this guy fell all the way down here, man. Let's go pick him up. And so that's typically what happens there. Maybe there's a question mark. For Hurts, it was just kind of like he had bounced around. Does he really have the arm to play in the NFL? He has the athletic ability. I think obviously comparing him to Jalen Milroe isn't really a good comparison because I thought that Hurts obviously was passing a lot better. Russell Wilson was the size. That was the big part with him. Same thing with Drew Brees. It was size, right? But you kind of had that arm talent. What happens when you get outside of those first 40 picks is that you are now drafting for a starter. And if that you're no longer drafting for a starter. Those quarterbacks aren't starters, right? So then you start going. You typically don't see another quarterback again until around the 4th round. That's normally where you start getting the kind of that run on quarterbacks again. And I thought with Shedeur, you start hearing things after the draft that you didn't have information about. He was going into these team interviews as more of like a recruiting visit, whereas it should have been a job interview. I thought the comment on him not having an agent was also a really big one of like, his camp just didn't have.
Not just that, but Dion was acting as his agent. Like
right.
That your agent, I can only imagine how it's going.
Right. So you don't have that actual behind closed doors. Hey, man, what do you really think of my guy? Like, where's he really going to go? I think that ended up being part of the problem. I think, too, just if you're going to, so it goes back. Let's go back. If I'm drafting a backup quarterback, I'm not drafting a guy and being okay with everything else that comes around that, with Dion calling me because why is he not playing? Yeah. The entourage, whatever you want to call it. I think that ended up biting him in the butt in terms of he slid further down. Then he goes to the Browns, who drafted 4 quarterbacks. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. If you flip Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, no one would say anything.
Exactly. I think that's what threw me off the most is like seeing Dylan Gabriel go. Tyler Shook went before him, and to the Saints, who also needed a quarterback, and we're picking at 9. Like, it was just a few separate issues where I was just like, what are we doing here? So real quick, do you taking a look here, you see Cleveland way down here at the bottom of the least efficient offense in the entire NFL. How many starts, if any starts, do you think Shedeur gets? Does he fit into what Kevin Stefanski wants to do? Because he is kind of falling into that, one of those offensive genius types. Does Shedeur kind of work into that system? Because we had him comp to Brock Purdy. He's kind of a system quarterback, game executive, game manager type. Does Shedeur fit into that? And a lot of that has to do with the coachability factor of it. Don't know how that's going to work because of all the different things we just talked about. So what's your opinion on that?
I thought the viral video of him and Cam Ward working together in Las Vegas was really telling, because you have Cam Ward, who basically came from nothing and is calling out Shedeur, who essentially has had everything. He's actually only been coached by his father, and it's like, dude, we haven't gone one. I mean, and two, I understand there's a competitive nature there and they're giving each other a hard time, but it's just, I thought hopefully this can be a wake up call for how, you handle yourself as a professional. And then you have on top that they're retiring his jersey at Colorado. I'm a Colorado Buff fan. My dad is from the Denver area. I grew up. Rashawn Salam, it took him multiple years to even get his number retired, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner. So for somebody to have a 500 record as a quarterback, didn't break any passing records, even though he did have a lot of passing numbers. It's a different era. Right. But, to retire his number. And Travis Hunter, yes.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Heisman winner.
Retire it. I get it. But like that whole deal, like to me, going back to your question of like, do you see him playing? It's going to come down to his work ethic. Does he show up, be a professional, learn the system, play within the system, kind of bring your lunch pail? I think if he does that, he's got an opportunity.
Right. I think the hardest part about the Shedeur conversation is I feel like I always spend too much time on it because he's a 5th-round quarterback to the Browns. And it's like, he probably won't even play. Like, it's going to be Deshaun's job or like whomever. It's the Browns. He might get 2 starts just like DTR did. And so, like, I won't be shocked because it's Shedeur Sanders. We're going to pay attention to it when it beckons it, and it's going to becken it quite often.
I think, too, like, there's a huge disconnect with the public and these people that do this with what is actually going on in these NFL war rooms. And I think we're seeing that more than anyone. No one's even talking about Quinn Ewers and his fall from basically being a 1st-round draft pick, probably mid-first. He wasn't going to be the number 1 guy taken this year at the beginning of last season, but doing that and falling all the way to where he went with the Dolphins, I think that to me is just as big of a deal. And it just shows you that the quarterback evaluation. I also think anytime that we get in, he's a hot button topic. He's a vocal player with a vocal dad. And I don't think that's a look, we all, the baller brand and everything from the NBA, or like LeBron essentially picking his son in the NBA. There's a lot of things that have happened in the recent years with the NBA, and we're starting to see this. I think so. People are just kind of like, probably like you said, we talk about it way too much. He ended up being a 5th-round draft pick. Nobody's talking about Quinn Ewers because Quinn Ewers' dad isn't Deion Sanders. And so I think like that to me is kind of at the end of the day, why we're talking about it, and not necessarily should he have been a 1st-rounder, because I didn't think he was.
Right. I mean, I thought he was going 9 to the Saints or not in the 1st round. And so like people assuming that he was going 2 to Cleveland or 3 to the Giants, I was like, all right, that's a little weird.